Hey, Aaron Rabinowitz here for Red Giant TV. In this episode of Red Giant TV, director Seth Worley will use his Jedi mind tricks to teach you how to stop a rock in midair and make it float. Oh yes, this is the tutorial you're looking for.
You sure about this? Okay. What?
I know, right?
So here's our plate where Ben pretends to throw a rock, and he doesn't. So let's make him do that. We'll take this plate, we'll drop it and create a comp, and let's go ahead and rename it plate. Now we want to add our rock, and the rock that I have shot here is hanging from a string with scotch tape on it in front of a piece of green construction paper. You can do much better than this, and I expect you to. So we'll drag this down into the comp, and we'll position it in the timeline to where it's right at the spin that we want it to be. We want it to spin, to kind of stop its spin mid-shot and start spinning backward. Just give it a little bit of cool physics. So first we're going to drop key correct smooth screen on. And let's turn the filter off and use our dropper to find the exact color of the plate that we want. And then we'll mess with hue tolerance and lightness tolerance until it looks pretty good. So you can see the difference there it's making. We'll drop Primat keyer on, and we will select our background. And it's not going to be a perfect key right off the bat. And that's not Primat's fault, that's our fault for being so negligent in capturing a shot. But we'll go and click clean background, and we'll, like it says, clean up the background. Just selecting all the little pixels and dots and get rid of as much of it as we possibly can. And then we'll select clean foreground and clean up our, what looks like a potato right now. And once we kind of got it to where we're happy enough with it, don't worry, we can make it look better. First we're going to grab the pen tool and create a mask and put it around our potato rock. And there, that looks good. So now we're going to go and take our anchor point and move it to the middle of the rock and rotate it 90 degrees to where it is rotating like that. And so the next thing we want to do is go into Primat and find the spill killer and select color mode green and enable it and turn the range down to where you want it to be. So that gets rid of a little bit of the green spill that we have going on that rock. And then we want to add my favorite color matcher onto the rock. Target layer is our plate so that it matches the color of our plate and blends it a little better. Now it's not great, but it will be, and we'll get there. So let's start with animation. We will go into our rock layer, find our position and scale, and we're going to start at the beginning, scale it down to where it's about the size it would be if it were up in Ben's hand, and position it, and then click our timers and start keyframe animating the position and scale frame by frame until you get it to where it's flying at us. And then we're going to select the last scale keyframe and apply easy ease so that it eases off to a stop. And then we want to animate it by adding a wiggle position onto the rock. Because when it stops, it needs to kind of wiggle in midair like it's levitating. Set our wiggle speed to 0.5, our amount to 100. And that looks pretty good. That's not the only thing we want. See, it looks like it's floating. That looks pretty good. But we also want to add a wiggle rotation to the mix. And this one, we'll set our wiggle speed to 0.5 like usual, and we'll mess with this a little bit, see what wiggle amount we want it to be, how much we want it to be. You don't want it to be too much, but you also want it to be enough to where it's noticeable. So let's actually rotate the rock itself so it looks like that's how Ben would have been holding it. But then we'll mess with our wiggle amount to where it will show a drastic amount of movement, but not too drastic. You mess with it until it gets to where you're happy with it. So that's looking good movement-wise, but our next step, we need to create depth of field. And we're going to cheat that with fast blur. So we'll grab fast blur and we'll drop it onto our plate. And then we're going to go in the timeline to the point that we want the depth of field to change. And so the focus to change. So we'll select repeat edge pixels, and we'll keyframe our blurriness to start at 0 and move up to about 99. And we want it to start right about the time the rock stops moving. And then we'll go down and we'll go to the first keyframe and copy fast blur, and then paste it onto our potato rock layer. And then we want to go to each of those keyframes and change the first one to up to about 100, and the second one to about 0. Turn repeat edge pixels, it actually doesn't matter. So we'll put that one, the first keyframe, at about maybe 71, and then we'll go over to the last one and put it at 0, so it comes into focus. So it starts out of focus and comes into focus. There you go, that looks pretty good. So now it looks good, we have to make it look worse. We're going to add camera shake. So let's pre-compose both, let's select both layers and pre-compose it. And let's apply CC Reptile, so that way if it, position moves a little bit, we won't see any edges of frame. It'll kind of bleed out. So we'll select Unfold for tiling, and we'll turn right, left, down, and up, all the way up as much as we can. Not as much as we can, but just a good amount. And then we're going to start, before we add the wiggle, we're going to add a little bit of a camera movement, a zoom and a rotation. So let's keyframe, let's go to where we want the camera move to stop and select our timers, create keyframes, then go to the beginning of the timeline and scale it up and rotate it over. So now it will be moving out. Now let's select Easy Ease for our end keyframes, so it eases, the camera move eases off. So it starts in and zooms out and rotates. Now we're going to add wiggle position, and we'll set our, the idea here is not just to add camera shake through the whole thing, we really want to kind of add a reaction of the cameraman, almost like the cameraman hesitated and flinched right as the rock hit him. So we're going to keyframe the wiggle speed. So we start at about 1, and then the first keyframe should be at about 1, and then should get to 5, and then a few frames later go back to 1. So the idea is that it, shakes all of a sudden, maybe 3 instead of 5. So it is that the camera shakes all of a sudden when the rock comes at it, like it's like, oh my god, see, like that, oh my god. And you can adjust accordingly. Maybe 5 or 3 is too much. Maybe put it back at 2, whatever. So mess with it until it looks good, or until it looks appropriately bad. Then we're gonna add a wiggle rotation, so that our camera shake has a little bit of rotation. Set our speed to 1 is good, and the amount, let's turn it down to about 16. Have the speed be about 0.5, so it's a subtle rotation shake. So our next step is now to make it look good again. So we're going to create a new adjustment layer and call it Looks. And as usual, we name something something. We will apply something to it. So we're going to apply Magic Bullet Looks to the adjustment layer and do some color correction, because color correction is what will blend all of these effects together and make it look like one. So I have a bunch of presets here that I've made. We're going to go with this one. So I like how this stuff in this location looks. So here what I'll do is I'll turn all these filters off down here, these tools, and let you see kind of what each one of them is doing. This first saturation effect that I've applied has saturation turned up to 150, but it's in the more orange area, the warmer parts. And this one turns the saturation back down in the greener parts. So then the diffusion turned on, you can see you can affect the size, the diffusion, etc., and the grade and the glow. And it's up to the warmer colors, so the warmer colors are a little more diffused. You can see how it looks if I move it down to the cooler colors and such. Vignette, a favorite of everybody. Lets the edges go darker. It's more like, cooler, like a lens. Lift gamma gain here applied. And this is actually I've slightly made changes to an existing preset. So a lot of these tools have been renamed, a lot of them have already been preset. And I can't remember what this one was, and I don't think I made very drastic changes to it, but I still saved it, so I knew I would have it for this specific sequence. Curves I have turned off because I like it better without. So step 6, the optional shot at the end, the gag, we have the rock actually hitting Cameron in the face. And you can see I've already animated a keyframe the animation for this rock to hit Cameron in the face, the scale and position. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to pre-compose the rock layer with the animation, I'm going to drop RG Shadow from Warp, from Red Giant Warp onto this. And we're going to add a shadow to Cameron's face. So we'll go up and take the baseline start, end, and the height and slant and move it up towards above the rocks. The light's coming from above the rock. And move it to where the rock is pretty well on Cameron's face. And then after that, when we get it to the right place, we're going to mess a little bit with the softness and opacity of the shadow. And it's not even going to be barely even noticeable, but it just helps sell the comp, essentially, the fact that the rock is there. So we'll turn softness up, and then we're going to start by keyframing our opacity. So, because we really only want the shadow on his face right as it's about his face. We don't want the shadow following across the trees. So we keyframe it to where the shadow comes on his face from really about one frame. But then we have a good opportunity here to add shadow to his shirt as the rock approaches him. So we'll actually change these keyframes and stuff and actually keyframe the baseline, start, end, and height and slant frame by frame to where we can get the rock on his shirt. Now, light probably wouldn't actually work this way, the way light is in this environment, but if it looks right, it is right. And if it doesn't, it's your fault. So let's just think about that for a little while I bring the rock to Cameron's shirt, or the shadow of the rock. Shadow of the Rock also will be Cameron's autobiography. Look for that wherever fictional books are sold. By fictional, I mean books that don't exist. All right, so I think I've keyframed this to where the shadow looks pretty good. So once that's done, let's create a new adjustment layer, and we're going to apply Magic Bullet Looks to it so it can match the last shot. So we will apply Magic Bullet Looks, click Edit, and we'll select the look that I had for the other shot as well, so they match. And there you go. Looks pretty awesome.
I know, right? Okay. That could have gone way better.
Oh, I've got a bad feeling about this. The feeling that this was just too awesome. Nice work, buddy. Yeah. If you enjoyed this tutorial and you want to learn more about Seth and his work, check out his site at sethworley.com. There's great stuff there, including his web series Adventure Now and The Time Closet. Don't forget, you can always download a free trial of any of the Red Giant products that Seth used in this video at redgiantsoftware.com. And you can get tons of free presets for Red Giant plugins on redgiantpeople.com. In fact, Seth has been putting up a bunch of presets that he's created through his work as a director and as both a visual effects and motion graphics artist. Speaking of free, check out Colorista Free and LUT Buddy, 2 free color correction plugins that we're giving away for, that's right, free. You can find those at redgiantsoftware.com. Finally, I want to mention that if you're looking to keep up with what we're doing at Red Giant, whether it's a tutorial, a contest, a product release, or whatever, just follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and on our blog. Once again, I'm Aaron Rabinowitz for RedGiantTV.com. See you next time.